Well, good morning. I'm very excited to share today's segment of my journey, which involved going through my initiation weekend in 1990 with the New Warrior Adventure Training Weekend, an organization that's today called the Mankind Project. A very significant opportunity for me to do healing and growth in the area where perhaps I felt the weakest, the most damaged, due to my relationship with my father, and pretty much having an absent father growing up with a mother and three sisters. My masculine archetypes were not very well developed. My feminine, pretty well developed. So in one of my books, The Circle of Life, The Way of Transformation, I described this using the four directions, the medicine wheel, the four seasons. I describe our archetypal journey beginning in the East for the male. The archetype is the lover, and then the South, the archetype is the warrior, and that was what this training is all about, where you could really stand up and basically say no for the first time against the abuses of my childhood. A very significant step. And I remember after that initiation weekend, I took a trip to visit my dad back east. It was very important for me to do my best. I just realized I wanted to interject that I had not seen my dad for 5 years after I went through my treatment center. In halfway house, I remember telling my father on the phone that as part of my recovery, because he was a very active alcoholic, I could not see him, and my plan was basically not to see him for 5 years. So now, finishing my warrior training in late 1990, it was pretty much 5 years later that I would be ready to see my dad for the first time. And I remember, in fact, one time he contacted me when his mother had passed, and he asked me if I would be a pallbearer with him at her funeral. And, this was maybe just a year or 2 years into my recovery. And I remember telling him, Dad, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. And I hung up the phone. I remember throwing myself on my bed, and I cried so hard that I had to let down my dad, but I had to do the best thing for me, for my recovery and growth. Is that I wanted to give him some sort of a blessing. So I arranged at the time. I wasn't yet married. Anyway, I took a trip. I arranged with I had a pickup truck. I arranged to help this Indian fellow, actually, of all things, a doctor or medical student or whatever from India, who was moving his family from Minneapolis to New York City. So I helped. He paid my expenses. I pulled a trailer and carried all his personal belongings back to New York. So it allowed me to have the time and the resources to go visit my dad. And I remember buying a couple cigars and just had this plan to go and see him, to basically just sit with him. And I was going to have a little recorder. I was just going to ask him questions about his life and listen to him and record his story, and just taking the time to be with him and honor him by listening to his story. A very significant trip, and spent, I think maybe I spent a week, and I had this, I think, illusion from after doing the warrior weekend and just feeling a sense of hope for myself as a man among men and finding brothers. The biggest part of that whole process for me was feeling a sense of brotherhood, never having had a brother, never really having had a close male friend. So anyway, did this thing with my dad and sat with him on his front porch and lit his cigar and lit a cigar myself and poured him a cocktail, turned on the recorder and asked him questions about his life, just let him talk for about an hour. And it felt good. I remember taking a walk with him. Actually, I think we walked around the golf course that I grew up on. My dad was a golfer as I became a golfer. Anyway, I remember just having this lovely idea that he would change, or our relationship would change from one that was either just didn't amount to anything or had definitely a negative spin. Because I remember, like, as a boy and then even as a young man, if I came to my father with, Dad, I did this and I accomplished this, and what do you think? And always he would say to me, well, let me tell you a story about me, always his accomplishments were greater than mine. And, this is the typical egoic trap that consumed his life, that he could never really hear someone else. It was always had to be his story. So I remember after that, I said, well, I did the best I could and went back to Minnesota and got on with my life. After my India experience, it really was important to me that because it was such a devastating journey through the West. In this circle of life, you have the East, the South. The West is all about transformation. It's all about death and rebirth. The archetype is the magician. So in the Warrior Weekend, for example, we do on Sunday morning a sweat lodge, and that signifies that journey through the West. And the idea is that one day you may, if you successfully journey through the West, if you survive this transformation, you might move into the archetype of king. So this was the idea that I had. Like, I really felt that I had the West part down. I maybe wasn't that strong a warrior, but I really felt, because of my extensive process of devastation, of annihilation, of this journey through the dark night of the soul, I knew that process very well, and I felt very comfortable guiding other men through it. Now, though myself, I wasn't a magician, I wasn't a shaman, I felt that I had the potential to be the king who would set the boundaries, set a strong structure within which that more feminine process of transformation could happen. And so one of the warrior brothers that I had, a fellow named John, he definitely was a very feminine shaman type individual. And so he went with me. In fact, I can show a picture from our first trip in 1994. John is on the bottom next to me in front, and we took these three men, my first three clients, on this vision quest experience. And the vision quest would involve a sweat lodge, in fact, two sweat lodges, one before the solo and one after. And the whole purpose of the vision quest was an initiation type process that was very common with the native peoples. And I'd studied one particular tradition called from Black Bear or whatever, Vision Quest. So it was basically a 5-day intensive where there would be there's preparation, but the actual experience would be a sort of a birthing sweat lodge, and then a 2, 3, or 4 day solo where a man would go to a very remote place with no food, just water and his prayers, and he would pray for a vision for his life. And so this was typical in older cultures, traditional cultures. A boy usually would be taken sometime around the age of 13 or 14 on a vision quest to pray for a vision for his life. A warrior oftentimes would do a vision quest before going into a major battle. Someone that was in training to become a shaman would do a vision quest to pray for a vision about the clarity of his shamanic journey. So anyway, we did this, and it was very, very meaningful. Again, John was the shaman, I was the king. My job always, I did this for a number of years. My job was to hold the container, to establish the container. Oh, and I wanted to mention about my process of finding this container. It was interesting when I did that fathering trip with Buzzy, taking him to Devil's Tower and Yellowstone Park. He came back through this Beartooth Wilderness on the way down to Red Lodge, Montana, and then back to Minnesota. When I came down through this area, I just had this is when I had this idea, wow, this area I think would be really cool to bring men. And it was interesting then the next year, I believe, it was probably it would have been probably 1993. I brought Suzanne, my new wife, I brought her on a trip to Red Lodge because I wanted to explore the possibility of the next year doing this first trip with the men. So I wanted to find the spot. And so on my own, Suzanne stayed in town, and I took a day to go up these 2 routes up into the wilderness. In one, I found this place that was very forested with a creek running through it, and very, very lovely, very peaceful, very sweet. And then I found this other place that was higher up the same creek, and it was really pretty wild and rocky and pretty scary. In fact, so later, probably the next day, I took Suzanne to show her these 2 spots to get her opinion. And she liked the first place, very forested and very sweet. And she thought that was nice. The second place, we were hiking up in this really rugged valley. And at one point she just sort of sat down and started crying and said, this is like really too much. I knew that was the place. If it was too scary for her, it'd be perfect for the men because, again, part of the vision quest is to be scared, is to be out of your comfort zone, way out of your comfort zone. So in 94, we did the first one, and I want to show you here's a photo of me below the Beartooth. Hopefully you can see that clearly. Maybe later I'll post it with a thing, but it was a very cool spot. In fact, I'd gone hiking. This is me discovering this lake, and it was really fascinating in this high country. We had talked with a ranger, a national park ranger, or national forest ranger, or whatever, and he had said that as far as he knew, no white man had ever explored this particular area where we were.